Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Annie, congratulations. I hear that you just bought your very first rental property.
Yes, I am so excited. I wanted to be a real estate owner for a really long time. My husband and I had been looking forever. We finally decided to just take our search seriously, and we found this amazing property on Zillow, no less. And now we own a triplex and we have long-term renters, and it's just been such a fun journey and so rewarding.
On the podcast today, we'll get the details on how Annie bought her first rental. We'll talk about how she figured out what areas she wanted to invest in. We'll talk about how she financed the property. We'll take a look at her numbers and see if she did anything wrong, or maybe if there's anything she would do differently if she were to buy this property again. Joining us on the podcast today from Portland, Oregon is Annie Cole. We'll take a quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Annie. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Annie, you said that this is something you thought about for a long time. Was there anything specific that put you over the edge and said, let's do this? This time is perfect right now?
Yes, actually, my husband and I were thinking about selling our house during COVID. And as many of us experienced, the housing market in the Portland area went absolutely crazy. And so we were able to sell our primary residence and have quite a nice cushion of cash after we sold our homes. So we decided we had the extra cash. It was the perfect time to make an investment. And so we just started taking our search really seriously. Whereas before we would just kind of scroll Zillow every now and then and think, oh, someday we'll try. But then we started actually taking the search seriously. We found a perfect opportunity. We would plug every opportunity into our calculator to see if it was going to be cash flowing or if it was a good investment for us. And we finally found the one and pulled the trigger.
And where are you living now for your primary house?
So for our primary, we did end up buying a new primary residence and had some cash left over. So
awesome.
We actually, our primary residence, we moved over the border into Washington because housing was a lot more affordable in Washington. So it just worked out really nicely to be able to get into our new home and then have some extra cash to go into our rental property as well.
So you sold the house you were living in. You used that money then to buy a new primary house and then also a 3-unit building.
Yes.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. Great job. Well,
it was, I mean, if anyone else sold during COVID, you might know there were definitely overpriced offers and we benefited from that. So yeah. I'm grateful for the cash that we had to be able to get into this new opportunity.
That is great. Did you have any experience with real estate before this?
You know, I actually did. So I was a leasing agent for many years. I worked at an apartment complex. And so I was the person that would call all the tenants and let them know their rent was going up and then go around and do maintenance requests and help people get moved in and sign paperwork. So I had that experience in my back pocket. And then I've also taken courses on property management. So I knew a lot about tenant law and just how to support long-term tenants in housing.
That's perfect. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about this property. So this is a 3-unit building that you bought?
Yes, it is such a funky opportunity. So when the previous owner owned it as a triplex, so we bought it as a triplex. It's 3 units that share walls. They're 3 townhomes, but actually when we bought it, they had gotten it approved to be separate tax lots for 3 different tax lots. So now we own 3 units. And each one of them is its own, rental, but we own all 3 of them together and they're side by side.
So then did you have to get 3 different mortgages and 3 different insurance policies?
Yes,
Okay.
it was very funky. Every time we called anyone, they would say, wait, you're buying one building or you're buying three? And then
Right.
we'd have to go through all the process again, 3 different loans, 3 different packets of paperwork to sign, 3 different insurance policies. So yeah, we thought we wanted to buy one property and we ended up buying 3 for our
Right,
first.
wow.
So it was kind of like having triplets when you think you're having one baby.
Right. But I guess the advantage is you have one roof for the whole property. It's one property, even though it's 3 different deeds.
Yes.
It's really one.
Which has actually been really great. Speaking of roofs, we knew that we wanted to do some repairs, and we did do a roof repair this year. And it's been nice to be able to do some repairs on the building as a whole, while also benefiting from having 3 different long-term tenants and rent coming in.
All right, so let's talk about the tenants real quick. So you said there was long-term tenants. Did you get any information about the tenants when you bought the property?
Yeah, the former owner was also the property, or worked with a property manager who was a friend. So they gave us information all about the tenants. They had been in there. There's 3 different tenants living there. So one had been there for quite a few years and one was in their first year. But they gave us a backlog of all of their payments. All of them had been paying on time. No one had late payments. There was no damage to the property. So we really came in knowing that we already had great tenants, and they have continued to stay with us. We actually have not had to flip a unit yet.
Awesome. Did you talk to them before you bought the property? Or even, I guess, how did that first interaction go?
It was good. I think the tenants didn't quite know what was happening, but after we had made our offer, they did let us do a walkthrough. So we did a walkthrough while the tenants were there, and we got to say hello and introduce ourselves. Again, I don't think they fully understood what was happening, but they're very kind and courteous and let us walk through the unit just to see if there was any maintenance needs going on.
Were you working with a realtor to find the property, or you said you were on Zillow? Did you just stumble upon it, or were you working with an agent?
Yeah, we actually just stumbled upon it on our own. Like I said, I have a property calculator that will calculate all kinds of things, from the monthly mortgage payment to, I would plug in the rent for the area and see what some of the numbers would be if we were to invest in it. So I was doing my own search. But then once we found the property, we do have a real estate agent that we've been working with for years. She actually helped my husband's mom buy her homes all through her adulthood, and then has helped us buy our homes. So she was our go-to lady when it was time.
And then I assume you got a home inspection.
Yep, we got a home inspection. We did, we negotiated a little bit. So there were some things that needed to be done on the property before we bought. The person who was selling the property was also the property manager, and they did all the maintenance on the property. So they did some small repairs, like fixing the trim around the windows and replacing a couple blinds and things like that before. So we negotiated through that process. And then we also negotiated for them to pay for 1-year warranties on all 3 of the properties, so that if anything went wrong in the first year, we were covered. So that helped us feel a little more comfortable just making this leap into real estate ownership.
And how long has it been now?
It was May of 2023. So it's been about a year and a half at this point.
Year and a half. Okay. So how has it been?
It has been actually wonderful. I would say it's been very easy. And again, when you get good tenants, it makes a good difference. The tenants have been great. We just did our annual walkthroughs and had a couple updates here and there, but overall it's been very, very simple. I was extremely nervous, as I'm sure many people are, thinking about becoming the property manager and thinking, am I going to be getting calls at midnight, unclogging toilets and things like that? We have had none of those experiences yet. We did have the cost of replacing the roof, which was a big one. And then we did have a snafu in the first month of ownership. We accidentally gave tenants the wrong address, so their first payment went to the wrong spot. So, just a few little snafus here and there, but otherwise it's been really great.
So looking back on it, you had thought about this for a long time. Do you wish you had done this earlier, like seeing that it's really not that hard?
Gosh, that's a great question. I think I wouldn't have been in a financial position to do it earlier. Although I probably could have made it work. I think now that I'm a financial coach, thinking about how much home prices go up over time, yes, I definitely wish I would have gotten in earlier, just because prices are going to continue to go up.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword because, if you had gotten in earlier, you would have had more appreciation, but it seems like it was selling your house that really gave you the money for the down payments.
Exactly.
So.
Yep. It was the perfect financial time for us. So I don't think any sooner would have been the right time. It really does seem like we just picked the right time.
Yep. So a lot of times the neighborhood is more important than the actual property, like being in a good neighborhood. What's the neighborhood like that the property's in?
Yes, I am a huge believer, just like the saying goes, location, location, location. We not only looked at the home and all of the calculations and numbers for the home, but also the location. So our triplex is located in downtown Hillsboro, Oregon, and it is 1 block away from a hospital and a university. So it's we specifically looked in this area because it was a little bit out of town. So the property is a little more affordable, but the rents are actually pretty high because it's so close to the hospital and the university. So it's a great place to get constant renters. And I think it would be unlikely that we would have a high vacancy rate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, this seems like a good property. It was in good condition. Doesn't seem like there was a lot of deferred maintenance either.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it really was in good shape. And we've just done a few small things here and there, but it's kind of nice. We definitely found some that were more fixer upper, and we decided we didn't want to be flippers. We didn't want to have to spend all of our time. We both work full time and are pretty busy. So we wanted something that was pretty turnkey.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, let's take a look at the numbers. What did you pay for the property?
So we paid $924, and again, we bought it as a whole unit, and then that got split into the 3 mortgages, so about $300,000 for each mortgage.
Okay, and then what is your mortgage payment? I guess if you were to add up all 3 mortgages, how much do you pay every month?
Yep, our 3 mortgages together are about $5,300.
Okay, and that includes taxes and insurance?
Yep.
And then for the rent, how much do you bring in every month in rent?
So right now, the rent for each unit is just below the mortgage payment. So we bring in about $1,730 for monthly rent. And we're actually in an interesting spot right now, as probably many property owners know. You can raise the rent up to a certain amount per year for your current tenants if you're renewing a lease. And we have actually been not raising the rent as high as we can so that we can hopefully keep our tenants for a little bit longer. So the average rents in the area we're in are about $2,100 to $2,200. So we're still under rent and have lots of room to keep moving up.
Okay. So so you're at $1,730 per unit.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So for 3 units, that's like $5,190 is what you're bringing in. So, and your mortgage is $5,230. So you're at like a little bit of a loss there every month. Now,
it's almost a break even, which is kind of exactly what we were looking for, something that we could grow with.
Now, what about when expenses come up? Say you have to buy a new refrigerator or a tenant moves out and you have some vacancy. Like, have you thought through like how you're going to cover expenses?
Absolutely. So that was a part of our planning process before we bought. When we had the home inspection, we made a list of everything we knew we would need to do within the next 1 to 5 years. And we took some of our savings and put it into our business savings account for the property. And we have that there ready to go when we have things pop up. So for example, we just bought a brand new washer, dryer, and refrigerator for one of our units this last month. And we knew that would be something that would come up, and we already had the savings ready to go. So our planning was the first few years, we knew we'd use our savings to cover the cost. And then as the rent goes up, we will eventually start cash flowing and have more in the bank account to cover the savings we originally used.
So is there like a certain dollar amount that you feel comfortable with that you have set aside for savings?
We started with $10,000, and we honestly, besides the roof, which was about $15,000, the other maintenance costs have been extremely minimal. So we anticipated somewhere around $3,000 per unit per year. So $9,000 total per year. and we haven't even spent that much. So that's how much we have set aside, but we haven't needed to dip into it.
Now, it always makes me nervous when someone buys a property that isn't producing positive cash flow, but I think in your situation, it makes sense where you have some money set aside, you've got some margin in your life where you're able to cover that expense. But, I think for someone that maybe doesn't have extra money, you could get in a bad spot. But I think in your case, it makes sense, like everything that you're saying here.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's so important. Crunch the numbers and have a plan. We know line by line, year by year, that our property is going to start cash flowing this next year. And we are using the deficit to offset our profit in these coming years. This is something we've talked with our CPA about. This is something we are using calculations to do. This is very intentional. And we also picked a place that we have room to go from 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. We could raise rent by $500 per month per unit. So really do your homework and know if you have room to create a cash flowing property.
Yeah. And I think you do have a lot of opportunity where maybe today this property is losing a little bit of money. But like you said, with the rents going up, I think right now you could, if your tenants were all to leave or if you got them to agree to rent increases, like this could be making a little bit of profit right now if you brought it up to market rent.
Absolutely. And the other thing we've explored is, because we're so close to a hospital, we would love to turn at least one, if not multiple units, into a short-term rental for travel nurses or for professors or for folks that are coming into town for short-term. It's so close to the downtown area that I think we would easily be able to charge a premium and do a short-term rental.
Yeah. I think that's also a huge opportunity. I mean, you might be able to even double your rent if you rent it to traveling nurses. So is that something you think you would consider at the next turnover?
Yeah, we have been back and forth. We thought about raising the rent a little higher and getting more income versus keeping the tenants and then potentially flipping the unit. I think if someone gave notice, we would probably try out the short-term rental. Yeah. I just think it's such a good opportunity, and there's so many travel nurses and doctors right there. And it's just a great fit.
Yeah. Well, what about doing Airbnb? Like, is that legal in the area where the property is?
Mm-hmm. So I will admit, I only have briefly looked into the application. They do allow short-term rentals, but you do have to apply and get permitted. And we haven't gotten quite there yet, so I need to look into it further.
Okay.
But for anyone listening, definitely pay attention, because there are so many cities in my area that do not allow short-term rentals. So it's really important to know before you buy something and think you can do that.
The other opportunity that I think you have too is that I think you're really in a good spot where this property, with the location that it's in, it seems like it's in an area that's probably growing and an area that's probably going to appreciate over time. Would you think that sounds right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it will appreciate potentially faster than if we would have gone within the Portland metro city limits, because we're a little bit more rural and that place is exploding. It's going to continue to appreciate probably very quickly.
Yeah. So I think, overall, I think buying a property that doesn't cash flow is not a good idea. But I think in this case, in your situation, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's a lot of potential upside. And the other thing too that I think is pretty unique with this property is that if something happened down the road and you needed to sell, or you wanted to sell one of the properties, you could sell one of them off with them being on 3 separate deeds.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it is pretty cool. There's so much flexibility with it. We could have 2 long-term rentals and 1 short-term rental. We could sell one and keep 2. We could sell the whole thing. We could keep long-term tenants forever. So every time a new lease comes up, I feel like we're exploring all of those options and weighing the pros and cons.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've really done well with this property. Do you see yourself buying more?
I think we're at our limit for now.
Okay.
We really, my husband and I, we're both entrepreneurs. We have stock market investments. We have our real estate investment. We are actually exploring potentially buying another business. So we're really focused on diversifying our income streams and our investments. And I think, we thought we'd buy one rental and now we have 3. So it's almost like we did the work of getting 3 under our belt, and we feel pretty good.
And that's the great thing with rental properties. You don't need a huge rental portfolio to be very successful. I think Annie and her husband are going to do great with this property. And as Annie mentioned earlier, she is a money coach for women. If you want someone to help you with budgeting, investing, career development, reach out to Annie. She would love to help you out. I've got her contact information on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 495. I'd like to thank Chaley Ridge for sponsoring today's episode. If you're looking to buy a rental property, whether you're just getting started or you want to add to your portfolio, reach out to Chaley. She's a nationwide lender. She has tons of different loan programs, and she can find something that'll work for you in your situation. If you want to find out more, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit the follow button and you'll get a new episode delivered every single Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.